So just really quick,
Sure.
If we were standing at this exact spot prior to Water Street, the project being developed, what would I have seen?
You would have seen the arena, and everything else would have been blank surface parking lots.
Parking lots.
Yep. Sea of parking lots.
Wow. This is Built, the podcast where you'll meet creative leaders in the commercial real estate industry and hear how they make a difference. I'm your host, Brian Mon, Chief Innovation and Marketing Officer with Fidelity National Financial. In our 6th season of Built, we're taking a closer look at where commercial real estate protects, enhances, and even interacts with nature. In this episode, we're visiting a transformative urban development project located in the heart of Tampa, Florida. The development also prioritizes connectivity and the well-being of its residents, with pedestrian-friendly walkways, bike lanes, and waterfront access, encouraging outdoor activities and social interaction. Water Street Tampa represents a significant leap forward in urban planning, aiming to create a dynamic and sustainable environment that serves as a model for future developments. I had the pleasure of speaking with two individuals who were instrumental in guiding the entire project, Josh Taub and Brad Cook. Here's Josh.
I'm the CEO of SPP, which is the developer of Water Street here in lovely Tampa, Florida. And I came onto this project, and actually its inception, end of 2013, when the company had been formed, and entered a big planning process, and then flash forward to today, and we built a city.
Awesome. Very good. Brad.
Brad Cook. I'm Executive Vice President of Development here at Strategic Property Partners, and I lead our development team. I joined the company in 2019 as the projects were just starting to break ground. And so was there to kind of finish out the first phase of development. I've been active in the next phase of planning for Water Street Tampa, and also have been working really closely with Josh on thinking through where we're headed next outside of Tampa.
So give me a little bit of your origin story. Josh, where did you grow up? How did you get into commercial real estate? Give me a little bit of the play-by-play.
I grew up in Ithaca, New York, central New York. I graduated from Cornell University, which is right in my backyard. And then I moved to Seattle, Washington, and then started my career 2 years later. I lived in Hoboken, New Jersey, and started my career in real estate through a public finance shop there. And then was in New York area until 2005, and then moved down to Florida. Started my family there. I have 3 daughters. 2 were born there. For 10 years, was with the REIT platform, CNL, and we were involved in a lot of institutional real estate, a lot of lodging, hotel, senior housing, medical office, a big platform, and then got the opportunity to come down I-4 to Tampa because of this partnership that had been created that ultimately built Water Street.
Awesome. Very good. Brad, how about you?
So I'm a little bit of a boomerang story. I grew up here in Tampa. I left in 2004 for college and said I'm never coming back. Moved to St. Louis for grad school, and then began my career in New York City. Worked there for about 7 years. In the meantime, Tampa had changed a lot. Wanted to go back home, lay down some roots. So my wife and I chose to move back to Tampa. Ended up getting connected with the SPP team, learning about what they were doing, and then had an opportunity to join the company. And it was too good of a deal to pass up to work on this project in my backyard. And so haven't really looked back since. It's been great to be part of this transformational project in my hometown.
The formation of Strategic Property Partners made this hometown project possible.
So Bill Gates' family office and Jeff Finnick, who bought the Tampa Lightning, the hockey team, in 2010. And then he embarked on a preliminary planning effort and realized that this was going to be a very big project, even for somebody with his means, and then ultimately partnered with Cascade. And then the newly formed company just embarked on finding a CEO, somebody to build the company. And that was James Noazar, somebody who had been with JBG, big real estate developer in DC, and ultimately brought him in and said, we're going to form company. And we ultimately scaled to, during that planning process and then execution, to 70 employees. You could have done that internally or externally. We willfully did it, for better or worse, as creating the company and having everyone in-house to do those efforts. So now the company today, now that this first phase 10 buildings, 4.5 million square feet's done. We're at 35 employees, and you're probably more steady state than where we were.
What makes SPP unique? Is it the project itself? Is it the partnership? Is it the fact that you brought people in-house and created this internal team?
There's not a lot of companies that have tackled these huge mixed-use projects and done it successfully. There's a lot of things you'll find that are in planning that look great, but we're proud that we've completed 5 million square feet of some of the best mixed-use development in the country. The organization structure is unique, and now we have this platform that we can go and replicate and do in other places, which we're looking for opportunities now. We're only halfway through the first phase. The other thing is what's unique is the site opportunity. It's really rare that you get this much land in the middle of an urban core. Water Street at its totality is a 56-acre site. And if you were to look on a map, it's in the heart of downtown Tampa, not to mention along the waterfront in the core of a city that has really nothing on it. We didn't have to displace anyone. It was really dilapidated post-industrial landscape. This was an active industrial waterfront that really had fallen away, and it was just vacant surface parking lots that were supporting the arena.
The transformation from that nothingness to what's here now is incredible.
We've got 3 hotels, from the Marriott to the JW to the Edition, which is Tampa's first 5-star hotel. We have 3 multifamily buildings. We have about 1,300 units. There really wasn't much multifamily downtown. We built the first high-rise office building in downtown Tampa since the 90s. And that's over 85% leased up today. And we built 200,000 square feet of retail.
Yeah, we're located adjacent to the central business district, just south of it, southeast. Like Brad said, we're really in an arena district that's a very busy arena, one of the most active arenas in the country, actually behind Madison Square Garden and Barclays Center. That said, there wasn't much here. And so now what you would see is we've developed 10 buildings, 5 million square feet of new development that largely went up during COVID, which is a very interesting time because here these buildings are going up, and even locals in Tampa that may live in more suburban markets. And they came down here and said, what happened? A city was built during this pandemic. A lot of these exciting things.
Brad gave us a little history of the area to add more context. Tampa used to be an old fishing village that was developed with the addition of railroads. The development of Tampa's urban core that we see today, well, that occurred in the 80s and 90s and was significantly influenced by the arrival of a hockey team.
And so that was really the context of this gap in downtown between what had evolved as the central business district and this kind of vacant area around the arena.
I took a tour of Water Street Tampa with Brad to see what they built during COVID.
One of the things we did, tore down a quarter of the building and opened it up to the waterfront. Here you can see the water beyond, going back to that idea of connecting the neighborhood more to the water. So built this outdoor container park that's got a lot of local food purveyors, and then we've got a big active outdoor lawn where you can take your food and drinks and set out on the lawn and be right on the water.
Josh, I wonder if you could go back for me into 2013 when you joined the organization and you see the vision, or you start to describe this vision to a larger group. Was it hard to see, or was it easy to see what Water Street could become?
I think I'd be lying if I said it was easy to see. I think any really impactful project, they're going to feel uncomfortable, but being around very visionary people and investors, I think you saw the willpower that they had, and that was really what helped get people on board. But at the onset, it's not that anyone knew exactly what they were going to do. They really bought into the market and a belief that Tampa had the great bones and the foundation that would enable a project like this to be successful.
You can't overstate the importance of the ownership. If you were to ask people that were in Tampa that knew this area before where this project was, there's been dozens of development plans announced. It really took the horsepower of the ownership to really make it happen.
I'm interested in the fact that it's not only such a unique location and it's been around for a while. It wasn't like it was fertile new ground, white field, if you will. You had to transform this. The goal to build these interactions with the public, the visitors, with nature, with something that I think Tampa has, which is beautiful waterfront, wonderful weather, So tell me a little bit about, from a design perspective, maybe some considerations that you see, Brad, from this is different than just constructing vertical buildings. This is much bigger than that. But initially, what makes it unique from a design perspective?
It was something that was really fun and a challenge to work through because of the largely blank slate nature of it. But the things we did have to respond to were a waterfront that we wanted to make stronger connections to. We wanted to connect what had been disconnected parts of the city, and it was acknowledged that all the infrastructure was completely outdated.
The team worked with the city of Tampa to address long-term problems.
We had a broken road grid, we had broken utility infrastructure, so we really were able to start from scratch. And because we weren't doing just one project at a time and we were thinking about the whole thing, we engaged the best kind of planners and landscape architects in the country to really re-envision what does an ideal urban form look like. And so we're able to do really unique things like redefine a street grid, which doesn't sound like much, but it allows you to say, like, what are the ideal block sizes? A lot of cities can't really change that. What is the ideal sidewalk width? And you're able to do things like size the sidewalks in a way that allows you to have ample shade and double rows of trees and things that are really hard to do when you're in a city and your lot line is 5 feet away from the road. And so that allowed us to think from scratch on what is the ideal urban form and how can we do it in a way that makes this a place that people really want to be.
Though they found this freedom empowering, Josh and the rest of the team faced challenges executing the build.
The most challenging part of this process was the unlimited possibilities of what you could do. If you have, say, a gas station next door that you just can't do anything with, right. It's there. You have to respond to it. But what it's going to do is limit the options for your planning for the adjacent land. I think that was one of the tough things where you have people feel the responsibility and want to do the best they possibly can by investors, by the city and the region, and you can overthink things. And at some point, you can measure as many times as you want, but you have to cut.
You could start getting into weird things where like, we could have unlimited public space and it could look like this. And that's why you really lean on your experts and collaboration to figure out a lot of times actually more public space is not better. We wanted enough space so that you could have outdoor retail and F&B spill out onto the sidewalk, but you don't want it so wide that it feels vacant and dead. And so I think we've struck a really great balance here. And one of the most rewarding things for us was when the first phase was open, the buildings are beautiful. We're proud of the buildings, but seeing the street life and active and the energy, and that's really what's our special sauce at the end of the day is these neighborhoods feeling alive and vibrant. And I think we did a pretty good job with that. You see all this outdoor cafe seating. That's a really big part of the urban design. We wanted the indoor life to spill outside. You've got this collision, you've got people over here, you've got people walking through here. And so each retailer gets their own dedicated outdoor space that was included in their premises. And so they can put their own cafe seating out there, tables, chairs, umbrellas, signage. And so if you're here tonight, you'd see all of these tables and chairs full and people really enjoying themselves. This is Raybon Plaza. This is one of our bigger kind of park spaces. And what you're seeing, it's technically called a runnel, but you've got this shallow water feature that's running throughout the park. And it's the inspiration for the designer was Florida's aquifer system. So you've got water, it's bubbling up in places, it's creating a visual effect, there's sound, and then it's eventually dumping back down into this central rain garden. And so you can see beautiful landscaped bed. But when there's heavy rain pour, that's all dumping into this kind of rain garden, and it's designed in a way that the plants are meant to be inundated with water. They thrive when they're flooded, and so you've got this ecosystem that's not only attractive, but it's also practical.
Water Street Tampa was designed to connect locals to nature. And as the old adage says, location, location, location.
One thing that Tampa did that was really great as it was redeveloping the waterfront over the past 20 or 30 years is it started to create this idea of this river walk that wraps around the west side of downtown, all the way down around the south where we are and up to the east. The goal of Water Street was always to tie ourselves more strongly to the waterfront. And so we were able to weave that riverwalk path more integrally into the neighborhood and also connect the street grid in a way that oriented people more closely towards the water. So just physically and visually connecting people with the water was huge. The landscape was designed in a way to promote people's comfort and connection to nature. Water Street, which is our main street, has on the east side a wide 45-foot sidewalk, and it's got 2 rows of live oak trees, which are a native Florida species. We bought these pretty much as large of caliper of tree that you could buy from the nursery so that from day one you'd have a shaded canopy that provides outdoor comfort for people. And then we've also thought about integration into nature in a very practical way. A lot of our planter beds are beautiful, but they're also practical. A lot of the storm water runs off into those planter beds and naturally filters back down into the aquifer rather than total hardscape that overwhelms and overflows into the city stormwater, which ultimately gets dirty and dumps into the river. We've been pretty progressive in the way we've thought about connecting to nature in that way as well.
So we're approaching the corner of Water Street and Channelside. So this is the heart.
And you're seeing in the distance there the arena where the Lightning play. If you're looking to the left, you're looking south, you're seeing down to the waterfront and the History Center. And so now you can get a picture of that wide sidewalk.
Right.
And you see this, the row of live oak trees here, and you look north, and now you can see that 45-foot wide sidewalk section. You've got 2 rows of mature live oak trees, and you can already see that canopy starting to fill in. So you're almost completely shaded as you walk north along Water Street.
Water Street Tampa is the first WELL pre-certified community in the world under the WELL Community Standard, pioneered by the International WELL Building Institute. And they also achieved LEED Silver certification under the Neighborhood Development category.
A lot of your listeners will be familiar with the LEED building standard. For those of you who are not, LEED is a rating system that measures buildings' performance and sustainability. So it's sustainable materials, it's using lower energy. It's really focused on the performance and sustainability of buildings. The WELL standard is a new standard that was created that uses similar scientifically measured benchmarks, but all of the benchmarks pertain to people's health and well-being rather than the building's performance and sustainability. We committed to the WELL building standard and the WELL community standard early on and kind of at the outset of the project. And things that specifically means are access to light and air more than you normally would have. A lot of our buildings have huge windows, operable windows, ways to physically engage with the outdoors. So we measure noise levels and we report to tenants about the noise levels in the neighborhood. It has to do with the lighting of the buildings, and they're all coordinated in a way that corresponds to people's circadian rhythm. So our street lights are all integrated and they dim in the evenings, trying to get back to this kind of more natural cycles. Building standard also pertains to air quality, healthy eating. We had to have a grocery store which sold health products and healthy food. It's things you can measure that tangibly improve people's health and well-being.
Fortunately, we've moved in a direction that I do think end consumers, users, tenants are increasingly placing value on those things that I think traditional developers would have had bigger problems with just from an economic standpoint, which is refreshing because we kind of leaned into it and grew into it from an economic case.
Projects of this magnitude often generate an array of opinions, with key players frequently seeking to pursue different directions. But that wasn't the case here.
We are in a unique situation here, and fortunate for us and for the whole region, everybody seemed to see the vision.
And I think it's been so refreshing working in Tampa. The lack of bureaucracy here and the general alignment with the city, I can't overstate how critical that's been, that they were on board with the vision from the beginning. And so all of the coordination meetings, all of the infrastructure coordination, all of the reviews and the roadway, it was acknowledged, hey, we're trying to do the same thing. And private sector, you all do what you're best at, and we'll support along the way. And collaboration with the city has been amazing. It's really helped the success of the project. So we were thinking about sidewalks for people, roads, the right size for cars and speed. And then we've also thought about cycling connectivity. So what you're seeing here in front of you is a 2-way protected cycle track, protected being that there's a curb that actively separates you from the roadway traffic. And that cycle track connects into the Meridian Greenway Trail and the Riverwalk, and then it connects all the way, if you look to the left, west, back to the Central Business District. And so that was a big element, not only creating this new roadway connection. This was actually the first roadway south of Jackson, which is blocks to the north, to connect from the east side of downtown all the way to the west. So created this connection not only for cars, but also for cyclists as well. There's an abandoned little rail spur that ran along the east side of the project that we hadn't always had a plan for. We approached the Expressway Authority about, hey, can we turn this into a linear park? It's not very wide, but it'd be a great way to connect. It actually connects the Riverwalk into a sidewalk that goes all the way up to Ybor City. And so for 2 blocks, it varies in width from about 20 feet at the narrowest, about 50 feet. But we created this amazing little trail that the feeling is very different from our main street, which is polished and buttoned up. And this space recognizes the industrial heritage. So it's got Corten steel and more angular forms. And then the landscape is a little bit more raw, but it's a really cool walk. And then we were able to plug in a little dog run, a little seating area, and a connection to a bike room. So that's a space I really personally love. And long term, we want to make that an even stronger, keep that going all the way up to Ybor City. Here's this little pop-up dog park to that conversation of what's missing. So many of our residents have dogs. I can't remember the exact percentage, but we've got hundreds of dogs in the neighborhood. And so outlets for the dogs, they wreak havoc on the plants. So it's a practical thing to have a place where they can go and run and relieve themselves. But it also makes for a fun, engaging thing on the street. Usually there's people having their dogs run and play and meeting their neighbors.
As temperatures soar in the Florida heat, the team has established a sustainable cooling system to ensure comfortable conditions for residents.
In the most simple terms, we built a chiller plant that makes ice at night and it melts during the day. And the cold water from that ice is pumped to all the buildings. And that cold water is the primary means of cooling the buildings. What that means for the buildings is that they have less equipment on the buildings as you normally would have, and that frees up space on the buildings to do things with outdoor spaces on roofs like pool decks, outdoor terraces, and things like that.
So as you were laying out the perfect grid and the perfect street width or sidewalk width, you also said, hey, let's build this thing called the cooling district and make some ice, let it melt, cool the buildings.
Exactly. When we get to the end of Water Street at Cumberland, we'll look to the west and you'll see the district cooling plant. And most people think that's an old building because it's brick and it's fairly nondescript and it looks like it's been there for a while. That's where the chillers and ice plant is for the neighborhood. So underground, there's a network of insulated chilled water lines that run all the way back to that district cooling plant. And there's just a certain threshold of maximum efficiency of how much effort it takes to pump the water and what's the ideal temperature for blowing the air over it in the units. But the tangible result is that we've freed up a lot of the space in the buildings from equipment which it otherwise would have required.
The first phase of Water Street Tampa is a significant achievement. However, there's much to anticipate in the plans for phase 2.
We always knew they'd be part of the program, but I'm just excited to see some of these new, very interesting kind of retailers, some national, some here, some regional, but just to diversify the mix and make the experience a little bit more holistic.
The first phase is 5 million square feet, and we've built our way starting from the water and we're working our way north. And so we don't know exactly what all the additional kind of buildings are going to be, but we know there's likely to be another 5 million square feet. And we've built out on about 10 of the pads for development. We have another 10 pads to go. So it's easy to see how we're set up about halfway there. We're not going to build another 10 buildings at once. We had to do so much at once because there was really nothing here and we had to create a sense of place.
Right.
But the next phase will happen in a way that are both reactive to where the market is, but reactive to what the needs of the community is. And so we're able to respond real time because we still own all the assets. We can see what's doing well, what's not, what are people wanting more of, less of. So the next phases will likely be 2 or 3 buildings at a time until we finish the project. And the good thing is the planning principles are set. And so you're looking north now to the next phase, and you can imagine this sidewalk extending for another 6 blocks that way. And that's the idea, is this spine of Water Street continues north all the way, again, 6 blocks up to those next buildings that you can see in the distance. And as Josh mentioned, the idea is this experience continues, but the retail mix evolves. We've got a lot of restaurants in this first phase, and they're generally more willing to take the risk. And the next phase, you can imagine more hard goods, soft goods retailers unfolding as you move north.
It wasn't just the landscape that transformed. The entire team was evolving with the process. The lessons learned from this project prepared them for future endeavors.
I think the foundation of those learnings along the way, and it's even as we reflect on company, we really were a fee developer for owners in a very unique circumstance. Now, I think everyone knew enough to say these opportunities aren't going to come. They may be once in a lifetime generational type opportunities. That said, in the process, people were very committed to the team and a team of consultants around us and taking those learnings and having those applications on new projects. Brad's done a great job in Charleston, applying all those same principles to get through a rezoning in a place like historic Charleston. That's not easy, but you're selling the same things that he was talking about. And it's how do you create these synapses of these experiences on the ground floor and amenities within that just people want to live and function in and play in. And I think those principles they filter through the whole organization and are in the DNA. We had extremely talented people that were all part of the symphony of ultimately becoming a city. And you look back through time, there's going to be personalities, there's going to be hard times, great times, wins, losses, or things that feel like losses. And I think for them, for us, you look back and say, we had such talented people who fit their role because it was all part of something bigger.
Yeah, makes sense. I think it's interesting that so much of the United States, specifically some of these major cities that we grow to love and people around in their communities love, they're kind of at the cusp of needing to be redeveloped, right? They've been around for a long time. Tampa is a great example. You have this buildup in the 80s and 90s. There was growth until there wasn't, right? And then there was an opportunity, Visionaries. I mean, there's some wonderful things that are happening. The second life is going to be better than where it is right now. And so I find that interesting that, although you didn't develop a company to go outward, you developed a company specifically for the development. You've got phase 2 and you've got about half still to build. But as you think about taking the principles you've learned and the approach that you've learned and even the development company that you've created into other markets, what's been most exciting about that?
I know our team gets really excited about the complex infrastructure-heavy projects because that's where you can create the most value. Anybody can take clean site, great location, and build a great project. But we really excel in connecting with the local stakeholders, the municipality, what are their goals? What are the challenges of the infrastructure? And roll up your sleeves and get dirty figuring that stuff out. I think that's where we really excel.
I think just leveraging the energy of the activations. What do you do to create really vibrant locations where there's tons of activity? It's just places that people want to go have fun and really feel good about their world. And we just want to continue to leverage that.
The original vision was not let's build a development company so we can do this stuff all over the country. I think that's a benefit that's come out of the success that we've had and the realization that, wow, there's not many people who've done this before, and there's a need for this in other places. We have, a team that is hungry and excited about taking these skill sets to tackle other opportunities. We're doing a project in Charleston. It's much smaller, but as you mentioned, it's the same thinking and the approach, the importance of the public realm, the importance of the landscape, and the connection to the community, which is ultimately why we've been successful there in getting approvals in what's a very challenging place to get approvals.
Given that the needs of the locals and visitors have been at the cornerstone of this project, I had to ask one last question before I left. What has been the response of the community?
Yeah, I think the best way to measure that really is, what does it feel like being out there? What's going on? I think generally people come here and they're like, I can't believe this exists in Tampa. I think mixing all those things together has created a place where people want to be.
Build it and they will come. I know it's cliche, it's probably said too often, but in reality, that's what comes to my mind because you described building this up during COVID. People returned from COVID and they were like, what happened? You built a city while we were away, right? And then you mentioned developers really just want to see it. They're so visual. As a builder, one of the most satisfying things is the fact that at the end of your day, something is there that wasn't there before. And to me, what's amazing is how you've taken this space that was utilized before, but reinvented it into something completely different. And not being from here, it is a little bit hard to believe that this didn't always exist. Josh, thank you so much. Brad, thank you as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks for tuning in to Season 6 of Built. Join us in 2 weeks on an extension of the Tees Green Line as we visit a new connected community in Cambridge, Massachusetts. If you haven't had a chance to catch the episodes of the first 5 seasons, be sure to take a listen. You can find all Built episodes wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoy the show, share it with your friends and leave us a rating on your podcast app. Built is a co-production of Fidelity National Financial and PRX Productions. From F&F, our project is run by Annie Bartalos. This episode of Built was produced by Emmanuel Desarme. Our senior producer and editor is Genevieve Sponsler. Audio mastering by Rebecca Seidel. The executive producer of PRX Productions is Jocelyn Gonzalez. Special thanks to Josh Taub and Brad Cook from Strategic Property Partners. And thanks to Bill Bradley for audio support. I'm Brian Mon. And remember, every story is unique, every property is individual, but we're all part of this built world.